This is Lynn Fraser. I'm here with the Radical Recovery Summit 2017 with the Kilby Center. And today I'm speaking with Charles Crenshaw. We're connected through the Himalayan tradition of yoga meditation, and he's got a long history of connection with meditation, EFT, working with energy medicine. I'll let him tell you more about that. So Charles, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself, and in particular, the experience that you have that relates to addiction?
I have attended the graduate school that Swami Rama, who was the founder of the Himalayan Institute, founded back in the 80s, which moved then to India to the big hospital complex that exists there now. But I studied comparative psychology, Eastern studies, so related to meditation stuff, comparative psychology, still related to meditation, habit forming, stuff like this, and holistic health, now called integrative medicine. So that tripartite master's degree spurred my interest in habit formation, how to break down habits, deconditioning basically. And then Swami Rama sent us to New York, where we worked in the clinic with Dr. Rudolph Ballantyne at the Center for Holistic Medicine. And we also helped to run East West Books, which in its time was a premier bookstore in the world. And people ask me, why would I say that? That's because someone came in from the Vatican and said, this is one of the best bookstores of its kind in the world that I go to. So that's how I have that standard. But across the street from the bookstore was the New School for Social Research. And they had a program for alcohol and substance abuse counseling, in which I saw the seeds of furthering my understanding about habit formation and how it could relate to a population that might find it useful. The information that the tradition, and when I say tradition, the tradition of yoga science, as Swami Rama presented, so meditation, breath work, working with the body. And so I studied there for a couple of years because it was right across the street. And I also went to a very extraordinary seminary called the New Seminary in New York City, which was co-founded by a couple of Swami Rama's friends. One of his friends was Swami Satchidananda, the founder of Integral Yoga, and a very lovely, beautiful old rabbi named Joseph Gubberman. He was Hasid, he was a Kabbalist, and he was one of the more interesting people that I've met in my life, aside from my master teacher, Swami Rama, who impacted me. And the focus of the seminary work was spiritual counseling. And so then again, it comes up with, okay, what is real spiritual health? What is real health? So all these things and my own practice, meditation, they inform my outlook on addictions.
What an interesting confluence of study and experiences and people that you're with. And yeah. One of the things that we know about addiction is a lot of times we're trying to get away from something that's going on in our experience.
Huh?
Could be stored trauma in the body. It could be, memories, edginess. There's all kinds of energy that goes on that we want to get away from. And we get away from it in lots of ways. We might go shopping. We might use heroin. There's all kinds of ways that we do that. So one of the things I'm really interested in is the connection with prana as you're meditating, and the holistic health view, and the EFT, which is an energy healing. Can you kind of dive into that and tell us more about that?
Well, one of the things about, you mentioned a couple of things about trauma being held in the body, and the first blush, Gary Craig was the one who formulated ideas about EFT, and now under the guidance or the current mentorship of the predominant EFT universe thing, Dawson Church, PhD, has brought the science to bear on EFT. So if we think about trauma, and there's things called trauma capsule, and if we think about genetics, it's one of the things that's easily changeable. The genetic determinism says that no, we can't change the genes, but the science is indicating that working with tapping can affect that. Working with EFT can affect that, the gene expression. And so if we have these traumas held in our body, okay, and so the idea is what is a trauma? A trauma is it's defined as EFT calls it a trauma capsule. It has some very interesting parameters. One is it's a life-threatening situation, and it's a situation that you feel all alone, you can't escape, so you're trapped. And so this gets stuck someplace in your body. It gets stuck someplace, as Gary Craig explained it, in your energy field. One of the things that EFT does is it works with trauma being held in the body and also trauma being held in the energy system, in the pranic field, if you will. And this is one of the things that Doctors Martin and Mary and Jerry expressed to us in their book that we read, Chariot of Sadhana. And that was an interesting thing for me because they said this EFT is related to prana vidya. So that brings it back to the tradition, if you will, the tradition of yoga science. Knowledge of the prana and how the pranas are moving and how they're blocked. Traditional Chinese medicine has a very excellent understanding of how those things are blocked. For instance, EFT in the training, there's a statement about the percentage of your pain that is completely and totally emotional. And you go, well, wait, no, I have a pain in my body. It's a pain. I have a pain in my body, and you're telling me that's emotions. I went then, based upon the input of the training, and I talked with a noted osteopath here in the city who was also, he apprenticed as an acupuncturist. His dad was a master acupuncturist. He apprenticed with him, and then he had the foresight to go to medical school, and he has this excellent blend. And I talked to him about this idea of pain having an emotional component, that if you lessen that emotional component, sometimes the pain can disappear or it definitely lessens. He said, well, we've known this with acupuncture all along. Acupuncture treatment, the pain, it resolves it. It can resolve it. And so the EFT is based upon the findings of the ancients. And this is where oftentimes we come into loggerheads with current society. Well, no, I teach a class on creative minds and critical thinking, an online university setting. And I asked this question at the end of the last week: is acupuncture superstition, or does it have any value? And people, just first blush, not knowing, oh, it's all superstition, nothing, that's all, And so we run up against this just lack of awareness
right
about it. And so the wonder of what the ancients understood after thousands and thousands of years of experimentation and working with themselves. And they said, well, you put the needle in a spot and you clear that channel, then some of the emotion goes away, or all of it goes away, and your pain is gone. And that's the thing that's so fascinating about EFT, as far as it being an energy thing. And then the pain in your body, which is where the block, the trauma is being held, could very well be gone. A lot of the tools in EFT are related to the things of hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming too, because Gary Craig was trained as a neurolinguistic practitioner. And so these things are all part and parcel. A lot of the a lot of the ideas are not new to the field of help along hypnosis uh, NLP realm. So this holding trauma in the body, releasing it. Now, fascinatingly enough, a good practice, a mindful practice of Hatha yoga. Okay, and I want to say Hatha yoga. Lots of the listeners will say Hatha yoga. Oh, that's one style. No, everybody who's practicing yoga, the physical exercise, is practicing Hatha yoga. You just have your name brand, but the poses are the same. There is a difference between them. You know, the scholarship has indicated. Swami Veda had a nice way of, Swami Veda Bharti, who was an elder of ours, now deceased, in the tradition, Himalayan tradition. He had a nice way of explaining it, saying, you know, there's the scientific view of it, there's exercise view of it, and then there's the yoga science, the transcendent aspect. And we actually kind of address that in our book, EFT for Meditation. But the one scholar named Singleton, he said there's yoga is a homonym. One side of the homonym is just the exercise that's popular, and the other side of the homonym is I'm classifying as yoga science. He didn't use those terms, but yoga science, which is about the evolution of human consciousness. And so in that yoga science, working with postures, with asana, in a mindful way can also release trauma from the body, because the trauma is held in poses. My best example is a lady who came, we're in New York, and my wife and I were the directors of the Himalayan Institute of New York for about 8 years. And a lady came for a seminar, and I'm not thinking that we did anything extraordinary from the perspective of working with hip opening postures or anything like that. But after the class was over, the lady came up, and very lovely lady, young lady, and she was, you know, in between tears. And so she's talking to me. And some things, you know, when you work with people, you're not prepared to hear. And she told me about doing these things, the trauma in her body, in her pelvic region from being raped when she was younger. It brought tears to my eyes, and it had been released, and she was basically cathartic in that process. But it was from a mindful practice of postures, and that was it. You know, with breath awareness in all cases. And when this lady had this experience, it brought home to me what I was taught in graduate school, because in graduate school we were taught yoga science. We were taught the postures as part of therapy. And
Right.
so it just rang true. And then when we come years forward to EFT, talking about trauma in the body, there's a book, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. Something to the effect that emotions in the body, that they never go away, they never die. They have to be released. Mm-hmm. And this also comes into play when I think about my research in graduate school. I was particularly interested in why it is that my ethnic community had the highest tendency toward hypertension. Mm-hmm. And when diet and things like that were ruled out, it was due to social stress, psychosocial stress. And actually, it transcends the boundaries of my ethnicity. Psychosocial stress is a major implicated thing for any now psychogenic disorder, psychosomatic. So the Swami Rama used to say, as a physician, that 85% or more of all of our dis-ease is psychogenic, psychosomatic. So the thing is that these things are held in the body. And so I thought, well, held in the body, oh goodness, then you have a broken heart. And I'm thinking, oh goodness. Actually, when I came across this awareness, I said, is anybody going to believe, is anybody going to buy that? And the thing is that EFT has come along and said, yes, you hold trauma in your body, and psychotherapy and the way we were taught to practice and present asana, the postures, was these things are held in your body. You're releasing them through the breath work, stuff like this. Okay, same thing a massage therapist does, releasing trauma from the body. It lessens the impact on the mind, and then clearing the energy field. The energy field can be cleared with what's called pranayama, but most people don't have access to proper presentation of pranayama. So one of the things in working with pranayama, in interacting with the breath, is that the breath and your capacity to work with it gently, calmly, and expand it has a lot to do with your mental equilibrium, your emotional balance.
Right.
So it's one of the things in EFT, because one of the things with EFT is that EFT can get you to the relaxation response, and we're borrowing words from that Herbert Benson coined, but the phenomena existed before he coined the term. Okay?
Right.
Being fairly good with my breath and noting, okay, I can do diaphragmatic breathing and slow my breath down, and I can do tapping in the same amount of time and get relaxed faster. I use this when I see clients often who are trying to be free of smoking addiction. And I say addiction there, but my opinion about whether smoking is an addiction or not has changed greatly after working with people, because an addiction you don't get rid of in a day, and people come and stop smoking in a day. So it's like, okay, well, what's that say about this idea of smoking being addiction? But that's neither here nor there. But the thing is, as I have them pay attention to how they feel, then I have them tap and have them pay attention to how they feel. And almost 100% of the people feel relaxed after just tapping, period. Nothing else, no anything else other than the fact that we know scientifically that the cortisol rate in the body is lowered by tapping. That's been researched to validate that. Breathing, then why is the breathing necessary? Because in my observation, people who came in who had poor breathing habits, their breathing habits didn't change after they got relaxed. The cortisol level in their body lowered, but their poor breathing habits went unaltered. So I'm going, okay, so what are the limits of EFT? What are the limits of the stuff the yoga scientists have presented to us, which now there are breath therapists, things like this, who are building on the understanding that we have been given by the yogis. So
there's a couple things I'd like to follow up on there. One is, can you do an example of a basic tapping? That are you doing it on the face mostly, or
it's mostly on the face? There's a few spots that you can see on me. So probably just as a basic thing I can show you. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and do that?
So one of the things about tapping, one of the things about being healthy. Okay. So if you have someone who is an addict, no matter what it is, okay, there's a portion of them that wants to get well, and there's a portion of them that wants to maintain that habit. And there is, so that one portion that wants to maintain the habit is secondary gain. I'm keeping this for some purpose, okay? Then there's another thing that has to do with the energy body that is called psychological reversal, is what they termed it, okay? In the field of massage and energy work, it's called polarity therapy. And the poles, it's like a battery, and the battery, positive here, negative here, the battery's turned around. And so nothing's getting cleared up because the battery's in backwards. And so this first position I'm going to show you is a place where you start to work on, if the battery is in backwards, put it in the right direction. And
Right.
so that's tapping on this part of your hand, just tapping right there. That's the first place a person starts. Okay. So now we're going to do the top of our head next, very top of the head. You just tap there. Okay. So people say how many times? 5 to 7, something like that. Okay. Now, the end of the hair of the eyebrow, the very end of the hair. Okay. So you have 2 of them, so you can do one or both, and you just tap. Okay. Now, the corners of the eye. So you're staying free of the eyeball, but right at the corners, you tap. So these are acupuncture points. Now, halfway between the corners of your eye, underneath your eye, you tap. Okay. Underneath your nose, in the dimple between your lip and your chin. Now, I'm going to explain this next one, and since I have this mic around my neck, it's going to be difficult for me to do, but find the pit of your throat. Okay. Now, if you have your finger in the pit of the throat, you'll notice, go either side, there's the collarbone. Okay. So get to the first, and then if you go down a little bit, you feel soft tissue. That's the flesh between the collarbone and the first rib. That's the point that you want to tap. So you want to tap one of those or both of those. And you can, if the tapping is not comfortable, you can just rub. I'm rubbing now, so it's not making any sound in the mic. Okay. So then let's do, since we have a limited thing, it's going to be difficult for me to show you. There's one underneath the arm also, but let's do across the wrist here. So you have your wrist, 3 fingers, and we're just covering the spot. That's it. You're going to tap there. Okay. Turn the hand over and tap here. Okay. Space between the bones here and tap in there. Okay. So now that's an example. Again, we slightly modified that because we didn't do under the arm because I'd have to get up and stand up, and but that's a sample. In the time that it takes to do that with the 1 point, give or take, that we did do, the time it takes to do that, just on yourself, tapping 5, 7, less than the time it takes for you to sit at a street light. That's enough to experience the reduction in the cortisol rate and have the sense of ease that people experience in the settings when they come as a client for whatever their difficulty is. If I'm having, especially if somebody's smoking, so they can see, because the smoking is really about, everybody says, I'm trying to relax. I'm going, well, you're confused about what relaxation is. So just that simple thing produces the effect. No conversation other than telling you, pointing out to you where it is, and
Right.
now just for the sake of argument, do you feel any different? Now you are a practice meditation practitioner, and so do you notice any difference after just doing that simple thing? We normally do it twice, but I'm curious if you notice any difference.
I can feel a bit of a difference. Yeah. It feels more relaxed. Yep.
Yeah. And so the sensitive people pick up on it almost immediately. I've had people just do really, it comes down to, there are certain points that are your points. They're your points. And my example for that is in pitching the EFT for meditation book. What came to mind was, I've been practicing meditation for a long time. And there was one thing, a trauma that was being held maybe in my body. Now I'm explaining this now and going, well, maybe it was because part of the trauma had to do with my face or whatever, but a traumatic situation happened when I was 8 or 10 years old with my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I was tapping, and I'm forgetting which side, but one of these points was the point that I found, hey, if I tap there, more stuff comes out. And I'm assuming that was the place where I got my jaw smacked. And I tapped there, I cried like a baby for a half hour. And when I met Dr. Dawson Church, I said, I'm a meditator for, by that time, 30 years. I'm here because this released something, and my meditation practice changed.
What happened in your meditation practice?
It got, something was like, it got quieter, the ability to focus, which is, if we think about emotional purification, what were we taught? Emotional purification, you want to basically be balanced, because that's what part of EFT is. It's emotional purification, but also your meditation practice is emotional purification. You're learning how to disassociate, okay, or disidentify with troubling things. And the way that yoga science explains it, the troubling things are everything that's not your true nature is going to trouble you.
Right.
And so
that's a lot of things.
Yes, that's a lot of things. That's the mind.
Yeah.
And so if you disidentify with that troubling thing, then you have peace. And one of the things that EFT does, when you're working with, when you need the assistance of a qualified practitioner, it can help you to disidentify with those traumatic things that you're holding in your memories, so that you can be free of the addiction or progress through a troublesome time in your meditation practice. And that, to me, is the extraordinary thing, which is why, again, that we thought the book was important, so that people could see you have this tool, and it has developed out of traditional Chinese medicine. To me, it's just fascinating. Oh, wow, this is a wonderful connection. And how can we use these tools to help us progress, release our traumas, help with habit change? Because I see addiction as just a habit. Now, granted, as you well know, you have to detox from things like heroin and things like this. And the interesting thing here, though, now is that when I talk to just smoking, I say, okay, how long does it take for nicotine to leave your body? And I hear all kinds of things. One person says a year. I'm going, no, it's gone in 3 days. I said, so after 3 days, it's no longer the nicotine. You cannot blame it on nicotine. It's just habit, changing habit, understanding, deconditioning from. So what is, all addictions are like that. When you're completely clear of heroin in your body, when you're completely detox from alcohol, you have to do a 12-step program. You need to be in a 12-step program. You need to go, okay, be in the milieu of people who are going, okay, I'm not going there. I'm not going to the people who I used to hang out with when I shot up or did. So there are those things, but still there is the in your body. Where is trauma held in your body? Is it possible to do things like tapping, to speed through those roadblocks, to get me beyond 1 year, get me to 2 years, get me to complete sobriety? And the thing is that we seldom look at it from that perspective. And with the approach, for instance, that your clinic has of non-dual awareness, because we're talking the same thing, whether we call it non-dual awareness, we're talking about when you understand that it's your mind that needs to be deconditioned from its habits, and that your true nature is ever pure, ever free, ever blissful. Words I'm sure you've heard before.
Yes, I have.
Then is staying in touch with that. Now, it's a difficult task, even for a person who doesn't have a life-threatening addiction like heroin's. or opioid or alcohol. But it's a difficult task to do that, and it's the reason why, in my opinion, again, the 12-step programs and things are important for people who have those things, so they have community to back up, to keep them on the road while they work through getting into maybe a yoga class, having EFT sessions, PTSD. There are research studies that have shown that if we are abused when we're kids, then we grow up and we have some disorders that we didn't necessarily volunteer to have. They just come because in the body things are there and they develop. Now, if we knew that, if research shows that, and a person is thinking, okay, well, I have my mama thing, or I have my, I had a client recently, and you hear these things, and I didn't have a good mom and daddy. I'm going like, so there's a whole reparenting thing that needs to go on there. Like, it's okay. Like, and so I'm thinking, oh goodness, the research is clear. Then what's going to develop here? And so I recommended, maybe we should do an EFT session to clear up some of these things, so traumas that are hiding there, so that they don't manifest in some dis-ease in the physical body from the trauma. So right. It's kind of the same thing with the substance abuse. How much of it is, well, I'm an alcoholic because I'm genetically predisposed. Well, again, you might be genetically predisposed, but your habits you have a choice over. And one of the things that the church has shown in research, they did a study where you can change the expression of the gene. You have it, but you change its expression. You're going like from tapping, and they're going like from tapping. To me, the thing with addictions is really clearing the energy body, getting the physical blocks, the traumatic blocks out of the body, and progressing to understand our true nature. And for certain, there's no doubt about it. Unless you're an extraordinary person, and history has not indicated, as I recall, any extraordinary persons like this who've gone from being a total bombed out addict, and then the next day being a saint or a sage. You have to progress, progress through the stages systematically, and then recognition. And this is laid out in yoga science too, because you start off with doing postures, you practice meditation, and then you go on to the higher philosophies or higher understandings, or what I like to say is increasing the subtlety of your awareness to be able to discern the nature of reality.
So there's a bunch of things that have been coming up as I've been listening to you that I'd like you to go into a little bit more. One of them is when we're tapping somewhere in our head or our, the neck area, but the trauma might be stored in the pelvis or someplace different in the body. Can you explain what happens with that? Why is it that tapping up on the head releases trauma?
It's interesting because there is the same thing that happens. Why is it that trauma releases in your body when you're doing relaxation? For instance, there's a contingent that are only doing relaxation for PTSD. They're doing yoga nidra for PTSD. Not tapping, but it's working with releasing trauma from the body. Okay? Now, I haven't delved into that greatly because I've been taught yoga nidra, but there's been yoga nidra used for PTSD, and it's out there.
Dr. Richard Miller, who developed that, is actually one of the people we've interviewed for this summit.
Okay. So outstanding. You're not tapping on any place in the body. You relax the entire body, then trauma's released. It's the same principle. The cortisol relaxing the body, was it actually the pose that young lady did that opened up that thing where she was cathartic about the rape? Was it the pose, or was it the relaxation? We don't know. We don't know with relaxing the muscles in general. So however we're doing that, okay? And then And then back to the initial premise that Gary Craig had with this is that the cause of a negative emotion is a block in the energy body. So the energy body is the pranic sheath is being affected by relaxation. The pranic sheath is being affected by tapping. Okay, so where it releases in the body is wherever you have it, and you don't have to tap on it directly.
Right.
Although there are in EFT, for instance, if I ask you, where do you feel the emotion in your body? And this actually has come from hypnosis and NLP work. Where do you feel the emotion in your body? Oh, I feel it in my shoulder. Okay. So then what does it feel like? What's its color? All these things. And then you tap on that area. Okay. So it can specifically work at this. The generalities of the basic recipe, if you will, can work on these things. Sometimes for people, lickety split. I had a client, and she told us, oh, when we first met her, oh, I just play piano. Okay. And I'm a piano teacher. I'm going, okay. And she invited us to the Indianapolis Museum of Art to the trio she was performing with. And I always like to say Chopin because Chopin was a great composer of piano music. But I don't recall if it was Chopin or not. But I go in this trio, and I'm going, no, darling, you're not a piano player. You are a maestro here, you are a maestro. Not coming to find out she had played with the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra and stuff like this. I'm kind of going, oh, you're just being modest. You are really. So she came one day, and she had a wrist pain. She was a student in our yoga classes. She had wrist pain. And so we sat for 10, 15 minutes tops. We tapped on the pain, just to have wrist pain. What came up was something from her childhood practicing piano. The pain went away in that 10, 15 minutes. It has never returned. Okay?
Right. Wow.
So it's just a generality. It's a generality. And sometimes things happen like that, and sometimes, nope, they don't happen that fast. Okay?
Right. What I've experienced sometimes, though, with people that I work with is that the intensity of the experience is pretty high.
Uh-huh.
And tapping can really help that release. So just the simple doing some tapping on their face and those points that you were talking about, there's something about that even a very intense memory resolves and releases more quickly.
No, see, it's interesting because in EFT and NLP, so something intense. I always establish in my hypnosis sessions if I know there's something going to be traumatic, or NLP session, or so it's called anchoring.
Mm-hmm.
Remember a pleasant place, okay, and then you kind of this is your safe place. This is your safe place. So touch your hand there. This is your safe place, okay. So if something really traumatic comes up that's beyond the pale, touch that place, and you immediately go back because you've anchored it to that safe place.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can sometimes get you around. There are people who say, well, why are you bringing up this negativity? I don't want to re-traumatize. This thing, re-traumatization is big. I'm going, well, no, the idea is EFT, one of the things is related to exposure therapy. And exposure therapy was championed by, for instance, Wolpe when he did the development of systematic desensitization. So you see something, and what do? You see something uncomfortable. Stage fright is the best example, okay? Mm-hmm. I get completely frightened when I'm going to go to the stage, okay? So then, okay, well, you feel frightened? Okay, sit there, breathe, relax. Do the relaxation, okay? Now, stand up again, walk toward, okay, I walk, okay, I'm close to the stage. Now I'm right there at the stage. And so, okay, let's do relaxation, okay? And then you go up. So that's exposure therapy until you can go up, deliver your thing, and stay relaxed. Tapping is the same thing. Mm-hmm. Tapping is the same thing. You're taking yourself there, and you are tapping in a way, you're doing the same thing. You're helping yourself disidentify from whatever trauma or mental upset is producing your conflict with presenting. And meditation, as we're taught, meditation is the first exposure therapy, because you were sitting there looking at your thoughts, have to disidentify. It's called an objective observer stance. It's called dispassion. We're taught that in meditation practice.
All of these ancient practices and tools and understandings and knowledge are proving to be true.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we didn't know how to prove it before.
Right.
So a lot of people just dismissed it out of hand. But now that we can prove it, that makes a big difference for a lot of people.
The mandate in graduate school, since Swami Rama was a scientist, as well as an exemplar of the direct experience of these things we're talking about. The mandate was to develop protocols to show to the Western materialistic scientific paradigm that this stuff is not hocus pocus. And so the thing is that's very difficult. And that's actually one of the reasons why I like Dawson Church, because he has the rigor of approaching it and, okay, let's validate this EFT. What's the scientific basis of this, out of the realm of it's the way I think I teach yoga teachers. I said, okay, well, yeah. Oh, there's peace and bliss and love. I said, no. What's the science? Why is it that your blood pressure is going down? How do you affect your nervous system when you do these things? And so this is why I've been following through with EFT, coming from the background of yoga science, as I was trained in graduate school by these great scholars and scientists and yogis and philosophers.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about the vagus nerve? There's been a lot about that polyvagal system. It's been coming forward lately.
Well, see, it's interesting because the wandering nerve is just the major nerve for the parasympathetic nervous system, and to kind of keep it simple, it touches every organ is touched by both sympathetic and parasympathetic nerve innervation. And for instance, when we are in a stress mode, the parasympathetic side quiets down because we don't need it. We don't need to digest food and things like this. We need to run.
Right.
Or whatever other sympathetic arousal thing we do. And so the thing is that Swami Rama, in The Science of Breath, the book is in the 70s, talked about the vagus nerve. And we're just scientifically now discovering it.
Right.
But he talked about the vagus nerve. They asked him, how do you affect your heart? Because his thing was, you can control the motion of your lungs, you can control your heart. But I think it was Dr. Justin O'Brien who asked Swami Rama about this. And Swamiji said, I just go in and I look at the sinoatrial node. I look at the vagus nerve, I see how it goes down, and I see the light that's running down to the sinoatrial node, and I dim the light. And so, an understanding on a subtle level of the vagus nerve and its implications, he had complete control over his autonomic nervous system. So whether he wanted to use vagal stimulation or sympathetic, vagal, aka parasympathetic, or he had control of that. And we're still puzzling with how to have a machine show us this. So the vagus nerve, one of the things too, Dr. Phil Nurnberger has written books, Freedom from Stress, Strong and Fearless, and he's talked about the sympathetic arousal, parasympathetic arousal, and then posturing response. Now we have freeze response now, okay? The freeze, which was why zebras don't get ulcers, Arthur discussed. But then parasympathetic response is it's not freezing, it's just withdrawing. It's being a possum, and that's a a downside of vagal stimulation or parasympathetic stimulation. So you have these things. So I'm kind of looking at, oh, now we are looking at the vagal nerve, but my teachers have been talking about the vagus nerve for now 20, 30 years. And Swami Rama understanding experientially, not, that's one of the things in our Western scientific paradigm is objectivity, and the psychoneural identity thesis says that everything exists, we're conscious because of chemical and electrical activity. Well, the yogis and now quantum physics is saying, well, no, and the non-dual awareness, the sand people are saying, no, there is an underlying consciousness upon which then the electrical and chemical activity, and then, so there's a big thing there about this. So I'm always interested when we find ways, again, scientifically, we find ways to validate what the ancients have understood experientially in their own bodies, subjectively, and saying, you too have these same nerves. You too have these same things. You too can do this.
One of the reasons we've been talking so much about trauma is that the trauma that we're suppressing in our body, the awareness of what we're suppressing, takes a lot of energy. And addiction is one way that a lot of people get away from that experience. So using all of these different things we've talked about, people can start to release the trauma. And I'd like you to talk a bit more about the habits. So you've talked several times, you've mentioned several times about habits. So how do you work with a habit of, so the nicotine has left the system, they still have a habit very associated with, I go outside, I breathe deeply, I smoke, or other kinds of addictions as well, like opioids or food, or how do you work with the habit part of that?
So again, I have read instances of one of the founders of NLP working with alcoholic. In the way that I was trained, I'm thinking, ooh, that's pretty intense, and I'm thinking, does that work? And so I'm going to give you the example from when I work with somebody who smokes, because the habit, I've only had that I know of one person, because when I interact with a person who has smoking habit, I give them a sheet for tapping in case during those 3 days when nicotine's leaving the body, they need to bring about the relaxation response in lieu of smoking a cigarette. Okay, I give them this. Okay, so the habit is just, or the craving is just that. Okay, so the habit part, people leave and they don't think about it anymore. It's like it's gone. And so one of the things that Bandler did, and one of the things I do in smoking cessation, is I have people, again, there's that portion of us that knows what's right. Okay, so good angel and the devil, it knows what's right. Okay, so, and I don't want to say that the side that's causing the habit is the devil, and that's erroneous, or an erroneous conception, because we have all of these roles that we play. I played the role of twin brother. I play the role of son. I play the role of older brother. I play the role of husband. There's these roles that I play, and I don't play the same role with my wife that I do with my mother. And so the thing is, there is something in us that's conditioned itself to play a role that is producing the deleterious effects of this habit. And so, what if we came in contact with that portion of ourselves and asked that portion, which is what I do, and again, simply speaking, it's what I do in smoking cessation. What's that doing for you? I'm kind of being facetious with it, because in clinical setting it's a little different. And oftentimes I've had people cry because it's a revelation. It's the same thing you mentioned, taking your mind to a thought, and just, if you don't see it, you can't change it.
Right.
So you're taking it there, and then integrating those two roles, and using the power of the one who has the poor habits with the one who has the urge to be well, merging those powers. And then as far as smoking is concerned, the habit's gone. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I question whether, you're addicted to nicotine, because 3 days is gone, and after that, it's not. It's the conditionings that you have set up inside that need to be broken. The deconditioning aspect of the habit. So in alcohol addiction and drug addiction, getting yourself out of the milieu of the people who you used to hang around with. It ain't good to go and hang out with your homeboy who used to shoot up twice a day. It's just not good. Okay, so those things, but the internal switch is the part that that's important. And Gary Craig, he worked with smoking addiction, and he didn't have that great of success with it, just with tapping. So these other tools of, like, hypnosis, NLP, and related tools, the non-dual awareness piece, are the piece, because that's something that needs to be said. The only reason why we have addictions, the only reason why we have these habits, is because of error in intellect. We think that's how Ayurveda explains our illnesses. An error in intellect. We choose the wrong thing to eat. We choose the wrong, because we think we're deriving some joy from this, and joy doesn't come from anything external. Joy comes. We are innately joyful. Ramana Maharishi, a great proponent of non-dual awareness, and one of the premier people on the planet when he was alive, who expressed it, said, happiness is your true nature.
Right.
And so all of our problems are because we forget that. We haven't been taught that it exists, or that, or that we are that. And then when we hear it, it may take us 10 years to understand it. Okay. But that's the ultimate malady that we have as human beings. And these other things are really minor, but if you're in the throes of drug addiction or alcohol addiction, it's not minor. And so we don't want to pontificate and say no. But the ultimate thing is changing, and that's what the in NLP is called reframing. That's what changes with the habit changes when you recognize on some level, even though it's not cosmic. Oh, there's something inside me that's all it's trying to do is strive for happiness. I'm just doing it in the wrong way. And the habit can be gone that simply if you get it, okay? Which is then why you need 12 step, because, okay, I'm not getting it. Okay, I need to be in the milieu of people who are saying, a day at a time, stink and think and all those things, and you progress.
Hard to access that basic happiness when the mind is clamoring and the physical body, the energy is just so messed up. And when
Right.
people, especially if we've had an addiction for a long time,
Right.
or if we have a lot of trauma,
Yes.
then it's hard to get through that, all of those layers of stirred up emotion and energy, even just to access it at all. So all of these multiple ways that we do this, where we access the breath, we ground into the body, we work with clearing the energy, all of those seems like it's a beneficial practice to do quite a few of them. So we're really giving ourselves the best chance that we can.
Yeah, and in EFT, there's something called the personal peace procedure.
Mm-hmm.
And there you write down, you write down anything that comes to mind that was traumatic. I have a friend who I didn't know the depths of which he was involved in the movement in the 60s with Dr. King. I didn't know until I saw the movie Selma.
Mm-hmm.
And I called him up and I said, Doc, have you seen this film? His name is Dr. Thomas L. Brown. And he said, Charles, I was the consultant for the film. He said, you saw these incidents. He said, those were my friends. That person there who got killed, those are my friends. And I'm talking to him. I have been meditating for a long time. I have been practicing tapping, personal peace procedure for a long time. There's layers. In homeopathy, Hahnemann said that when we heal, it's like peeling the layers of an onion. You keep peeling and peeling and peeling and peeling and peeling. And in meditation, we talk about the sheaths in the Vedantic. Go through the physical sheath, the pranic sheath, the mental sheath, going back. Okay, it's the same concept. But I came to a discovery not 6 months ago, again, about my status as a human being of African descent in America, something I thought I was clear of, but I tapped on it, I cried. I'm going, wait now, here I am. I have been consciously doing work to rise above the conditioning.
Right.
Okay. And here it is in my less than conscious mind is something that's still holding me back. And that's something also that changed my meditation practice. That's
Right.
the fascinating thing. That's why I'm so excited about EFT. I'm kind of going, okay, on an energetic level, I keep finding ways that something changes. So why not write a book about EFT for meditation? Because this is a way for the serious student to speed through some of the stuff that we have that's traumatizing us, that's preventing us from being able to deal with our non-dual awareness, being able to deal with our true nature, our innate bliss, our happiness. And have I 100% successfully achieved this? I'm still doing mine. I'm a lot happier guy than I was 25 years ago.
Well, that's a good sign. That's the proof that something's working.
Yeah. Well, students, and I said it too, the student said to me, and I remember either thinking it or somebody speaking it out loud to Swami Raman. He said, your thought that nothing happens, he says, you practice meditation and you think nothing happens? He said, that's not a very scientific thought. I'm going, oh yeah, okay. Something happens. Change happens. You have to stay there. You have to have the heart to do it. You have to have the grace to do it. That's the thing with addictions too. The change has to come from inside you. You have to want to change, and then you have to put yourself in the milieu, which I'm comparing with grace, to help you to achieve that goal. To wipe the slate clean of the conditionings, and then do the more subtle work.
Right. And it's really a ever deepening process.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Increasing the subtlety of your awareness until you rest in the ground of being and kind of go, no place else to go. Ramana Maharishi said the I. Nisargadatta said the awareness preceding I am. However you explain those terms, the thing is that our innate happiness is there, and all that we're trying to do, even with the addiction, even we're killing ourselves with the addiction, we're trying to be happy. That's it. It's not a bad thing. Trying to be happy, except the error of the intellect has us going about the wrong way. We don't need to do anything except be. But again, we have to work through and clear ourselves. Emotional purification, move step by step, step by step. And it's important to recognize where we are. Recognize just the same way that in the 12th step, hi, my name is Charles, I'm an addict. Hi, my name is Charles, I'm an alcoholic. Recognize existentially where I'm at, okay? And then in my mind, you eventually progress to where you're saying, okay, you're not saying I'm an alcoholic because you decondition yourself enough, but we won't quibble with the functioning process of 12 steps. It works for people who apply themselves. It works. And some people don't need it. Most people do.
What would your kind of top few pieces of next steps be for someone who's wanting to go into recovery? And even actually, before you get to that, how would you define recovery?
So recovery is being in harmony, thought, word, and deed in harmony. Okay, that peace that's in conflict, that's not allowing you to be happy. That peace resolved. Again, total recovery is recognizing your spiritual bliss. On the way to there is being physically healthy, eating properly, having some way of being mindful. Mindfulness is, being the big term now. The foundation of the practice of meditation is mindfulness. Now, Kabat-Zinn did an excellent job of popularizing this, and what he did was he took all the trappings of the Buddhist tradition out of it, all the trappings of yoga out of it, and people buy it. But I'm going, again, paying homage to where it originated. The ancients knew this, and they said, just being mindful. One of the fascinating exercises that Swami Rama gave us was, okay, you have something you want to get out there, okay? And exercise is, okay, mind, if you want it, you get it. I'm not sending the body, you get it. And you go, well, that's an interesting exercise. And part of that is the deconditioning, seeing what is the relationship between the mind, the body, and if the mind is having this conversation, something is watching the mind go through this exercise. What is that? Just mindfulness. Those are the kind of things that can help us. Beginning stages. There is in our book EFT for Meditation, there is a presentation of basic EFT. You can get that book and tap on yourself. You need somebody if you get stuck in something. You need somebody like a qualified EFT practitioner, somebody who's been trained. Okay, you can go online and tap with people, but you can get situations where the re-traumatization process happens and things don't happen. But EFT is generally a self-help thing, but when you need assistance, the book has a portion of it where you can do it for yourself. That can help you to kind of even get ready to, okay, well, as an example, I have this addiction, and you just tap through things, and you could make yourself break through to the clarity of, I need to get into a 1-month program. I need to go to the Colby Center. I need to go someplace, detox, so I can make the next step to being completely healthy and happy. Those kind of things. Go to a yoga class. Having good coaches, having good people. One of my mentors in OP is a licensed addictions. It's called CAC. Okay, so you're familiar with that. But he's also a clinical psychologist, and I get assistance from him, on some things. But getting people in your milieu, putting yourself in that place where you can get the grace of the milieu and helping you to progress.
Do you have a favorite quote or a saying that guides you in your work?
I have a bunch.
Well, let us have it.
A bunch. Let's see. Which one?
You can pick more than one.
Okay. So, in dealing with myself, okay, because as far as addiction is concerned, Swami Rama said, "You people are all hypnotized. You don't understand reality." So, one of the things in the Yoga Sutras that I took from some texts I read is that I am pure consciousness, and though pure, I look upon all presented ideas through the medium of the mind. That was a kind of an aphorism. And then we all need the grace of the universe, the divine, however you're saying that. We need the grace of sometimes a physical person, so 12 step, or in my case, my spiritual teacher, and we need the grace of ourselves. And I have this particular affinity toward the divine feminine. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so my favorite thing as of late, the past few years, is to go to sleep with this in mind. Oh, divine mother, have mercy and lift the veil of this your world bewitching Maya. So Maya is the illusion. So that I might see beyond the golden disc. Okay, that's the air of the intellect. So I might see beyond the golden disc that hides the face of reality. Well, Mother, how is it that I can attain the goal of my life if you don't condescend to grant me pure love for your feet, your being, which in reality is only my very own true nature? And so that's how I'm dealing with my addiction to the illusion that I'm something other than the bliss, which is our innate reality. True healing is spiritual health. Clear understanding of spirit. Some of the greatest saints and sages had infirmities in the body, but they recognized the nature of reality, and they were at peace and they were at bliss. And so all of our disease, all of our addictions and stuff, again, are just simply errors in our ways. And if we correct that error, we get over it. And again, have I gotten over it? No, I'm again doing my prayer every night, praying for grace to, okay. When I think I've moved fairly well along, then I find something, my wife says something and it irritates me. I'm kind of going, that's not over it, Charles. So it's a practice, and you know what I mean by that.
It's a practice. Yeah, absolutely.
With EFT, the idea is that the trauma could have been cleared maybe in 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Okay.
And so that's what excites me about EFT is clearing through that so you can move on, especially if it's stuff coming up in your meditation practice.
Right.
You clear it because it's the same thing. It's the same stuff. You clear it and you move on.
How could people get a hold of you, Charles? And what kind of things might you do with them if they're not in your local area?
So the wonders of technology like this Zoom and Google Hangouts and Skype, we can do EFT sessions with people any place in the world. We can do NLP sessions with people. So oftentimes we combine these modalities, and we have a couple of websites. My website is devoted to smoking cessation, which I don't recommend as far as I do doing it over the internet, although I've never tried that. But that's easilystopsmokingnow.com. And then for tapping, my wife and I have we have a little company which was named after a book that was written by our teacher. He wrote a book called The Art of Joyful Living. So we have a little company, and the company is called Tools for Joyful Living. And we do tapping and hypnosis and things like this. And that website is www.tap, TFJL. So tap, Tango, Foxtrot, Juliet, Lima.com. And that's where we can be reached for tapping. We reach for tapping, NLP sessions. And you can find other contact information for us there. But we can do this. You can be in Timbuktu, and we can do these things with you. As aids in helping you to progress, because again, if you are in the throes of addiction, you need the skills like the Colby Center has. You need to be bodily with someone, and just a tapping session or tapping sessions is not going to relieve you of full-blown addictions to alcohol and heroin and opioids. You need the skills of trained professionals there.
Thank you so much. This has been really interesting. And as someone else who's in the Himalayan tradition too, it's fascinating to just go deeper into this. And And, there's so many ways that people are working with addiction. And then there's the root causes of addiction, which we're getting to, and the root cure for addiction, which we've been talking about the depth of our own inner being and the habits that we have that prevent us from knowing that. And it's wonderful to get deeper into that. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome very much.
Go to KillibyCenter.com, Radical Recovery Summit, to see the full schedule of speakers and to register to watch these free online September 23rd and 24th in the Radical Recovery Summit 2017.